Glad to see some familiar faces as well as several new ones. So thank you everyone for joining us today. So we go ahead and get started with our third Business as Unusual webinar. We are speaking to badass industry leaders on how they're thriving in today's current economic climate. I am Lisa Baining. I am your moderator for today, and I'm one of the account managers at Caffeine. We are very excited to have our guest speaker join us today, who really is going to share a lot of positivity around COVID-19, some of the projects they've been involved in, and how they are leading as a best-in-class manufacturing company right now as we look to how our business climate has changed when it comes to safety and certifications regarding COVID-19. There's a few housekeeping things today. We do have everyone on mute, so I do encourage you to use the chat function or the Q&A option to ask any questions that you may have. I'll be monitoring those throughout, and we'll make sure that Jeff answers your questions at the end of today's session. As part of today's session, we also offered the first 5 registrants free lunch on us as a way to support different restaurants across the US during this time. As we know, the restaurant and hospitality industry has been so hard hit by everything happening with COVID-19. So I know we still have a few people that need to turn in their vouchers, but the ones that I did see so far were from New Yamafuji Sushi in Westport, Connecticut. So glad to be supporting there today. Now we have a few others, and Kathy we'll get to is eating from Gia Mia Pizza Bar in Wheaton, Illinois. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce one of our interviewers today, Kathy Steele, owner and principal of Caffeine. So good morning, Kathy.
Good morning. Thanks, Lisa. Super excited to talk with Jeff, the CEO of Crafts Technology. I'm a mega fan of Jeff's. I have known him for quite some time. Been a real big just fan of the type of business they run. It's an employer-owned business. It's a 120+ year business. Jeff joined the company. They're located in Elk Grove, one of our other clients. So, a double plus for us. And so I've known Jeff for a long, long time, but just have always been a huge fan of just the way they operate their business, and super excited to talk with him today. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about Crafts Technology.
So first of all, thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Lisa, also for having me here today. I think it's kind of a timely seminar, and I see a lot of these webinars that are out there. I mean, they're flooded out there. And I really appreciated, when you approached us for this, because there's some really good working tools that we wanted to share with people, because our neighbors, our friends, our family, everybody's out there, going to be getting back to work, or they're in work. So I think it's really awesome that you guys are doing this and just trying to create a more of a platform for people to acquire tools that are useful going back to work. But the short of it is Crafts, 127 years old. Company's been doing a very similar thing for that whole 27 years, basically working with natural diamond 127 years ago. And then when synthetics came up, you had tungsten carbide and the development of ceramics. So basically, we work with hard materials. So this is just like, because we're talking about medical, this is a core pin. It's just made of tungsten carbide. And basically, plastic parts are formed on there. That's it. This pin right here, this could make 1 million of these right here a year. So we don't make these, we make this. So the people who make the injection molded part, we make this tooling part for them. And it doesn't look too complicated, but I've been in tooling for 35 years, and this is probably the highest precision, one of the most complicated tools that we've ever made, and specifically out of tungsten carbide. So that's a kind of short.
Yeah. Well, I think we were hoping to show the video, but it looks like we're having a little bit of a difficulty. But I usually start the conversation asking about how your business has been impacted by COVID-19. And hopefully we'll be able to share that video or share it following this conversation. But why don't you tell it in your own words, tell us what's been exciting and going on at Crafts.
Well, the company, it's funny, most of the recessions that have happened in this country, the company really has not been adversely affected. And this one is no different, because we do tooling critical tooling. Say they want to make a mask. Well, they make a mask. Well, somebody's got to make that form for the mask. Somebody's got to cut the band. Somebody's got to make the machine to make the mask. So basically, we do the tooling that starts the process, you know, that basically forms a mask or does some part of the cutting or forming of the mask. And the same thing with injection molding and plastic parts. We also do a real lot with electronics where we get a really small nozzle hole. For instance, Kathy, I could take a piece of your hair, I could drill a hole in the end of it, and then I could use that as a whole hose to pump fluid through and deposit. The hose would only pump 1 nanoliter a second, but so we do some really unique stuff like that. But it's all medical electronics is way up, and also mobile computing. Everybody's working from their home, so go ahead online and try and buy a laptop. Everything's like all in disarray. So we do a lot with medical electronics and mobile computing. Again, the tooling that's related to the production of those and everything. Right now, if I turn around in my shop, I mean, I just got board approval for, you know, another $300,000. We just bought another machine. I mean, we're just trying to keep up with it. And again, it's almost all COVID related in one way or another.
Yeah, but you had a particularly interesting opportunity that you were able to seize, and you've done something that most manufacturers find really challenging to do. So you reduced sort of the lead time in producing something. So can you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah. That pivot, you might say, from 12 or 14 weeks down to 3 weeks. You know, it's funny because that pivot, it sounds like one morning I woke up and we pivoted, but the truth of the matter is we have been basically pivoting for about 6 years. So we took, you know, over a 127-year-old company, and basically we started building out the underpinnings of a real kind of technology revolution in the company, modernizing the equipment, and really getting into spaces, more narrow spaces, more niche spaces that we weren't exactly into. And so that pivot has been taking 6 years. But on this day, when that happened, they came to us and they asked us, they said, can you produce, you know, a bunch of these in 4 weeks? And we said, I don't know. Well, really, I mean, it's just, you can imagine the question. And then they explained to us what it was all about. And if you go online and look at this medical manufacturer now, they lay claim to doubling the number of COVID-19 test kits in the country. And it's not that our tooling is the singular item that changed that whole thing. But it's part of it. It's an important mechanical part of being able to turn on that system that can, you know, really ramp up production of those kits. So I mentioned that, so we've been developing over the past 6 years the underpinnings of the equipment modernization, plant expansion. So the day that hit is unbelievable. It was almost like, we scripted the pandemic, you know, like we said, okay, we're ready for a pandemic, and boom, and then it starts. We're like, hey, and he calls up, can you do this in 3 weeks? We're like, thought about it as a team, and we said, yes, we can. And so our pivot was a 6-year pivot in the making. And it's just a very interesting apex of time, or a crescendo point in time that happens. So,
I think Jeff and Kathy, I can get the video playing. I resolved our technical difficulties and saw what was happening. So let's go ahead. For those of you, if we do have technical difficulties, please weigh in the chat function. But I do believe we have it working, so we can share Jeff's video here. So give me a moment to get that queued up on our screen. Right, I'm going to go ahead and do one quick change here. Give me one moment, because I want to make sure everyone can hear this as we go in to share Jeff's video that they did on this really amazing project.
Just so everybody knows what we're trying to do, we're trying to produce these things. Never before in our lifetime have we had the opportunity to assist medical tooling and medical diagnostic companies that are at the apex of a solution more than today.
Well, I don't know about you, but I still get goosebumps every time I watch that video. I mean, I was kind of riding alongside as this whole thing was going on and hearing, things unfold in the process. But, it's beyond just making something, the reduction in time to get something in their hands, just all the things. Like, there's some key elements that you guys had to have in place in your organization to make this happen. Can you just kind of share some of those with us?
I think the most important one was just the equipment, the technology to be able to deliver in a shorter amount of time. But really what we did is we were right in the middle of this year of kind of realigning how we move product through the shop. We use a ERP program called Job Boss, and we're adopting strategies. They use words like velocity, trying to get work through the shop quicker, and lean manufacturing, you might say, things like that. So instead of running, everything in a row where, one person takes it and that one person does all those jobs in a row sequentially, instead we kind of did a lot of parallel efforts. And when you run in parallel, you can go quicker, but there's a lot more risk, because when you're talking about very high precision tooling, the more hands that touch it, the more different hands that touch it, you impose various risks. I mean, this tooling has tolerance of 50 millionths of an inch and 1/10 of an inch. It's as tight as it gets in tooling. And so we were very nervous, but everybody just pulled together as a team and really was extraordinary in their ability to deliver it.
Yeah. And I mean, talk a little bit about the culture. That I think you also have to have, a unique culture to pull off something of that magnitude.
Yeah, so we're an ESOP, and for anybody who doesn't know what an ESOP is, it's just fundamentally everybody owns the shares. We're like a public company, but we award shares to only people who work here. You can't buy them outside the company. So every year you work here, everybody gets awarded some share. But basically, so what that does is it kind of breeds that all-in spirit. It's the true, proverbial, rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody's share. I don't get rich myself. If I'm rich, then everybody else gets rich. If I lose money, everybody else loses money. It's the same thing. So it's kind of cool, and it helps foster a real spirit of collaboration and investment. You feel more like you're co-owners because you are. And not that you can't have that culture outside of an ESOP, but it takes leaders to really, really embrace that and implement and execute on a culture like that. So I have the ESOP as another tool to that endeavor.
Absolutely. I mean, we are a great game of business company. So I definitely feel like being able to share financials with your organization, being able to give people some skin in the game does help impact performance. And especially in cases like this, where there's a lot at risk and a lot of potential upside too. So very exciting. So you touched a little bit about sort of your strategy for the last maybe 6 years. I think you mentioned around some things that you've invested in, but we are in a potentially recessive time, and there are some key studies that have indicated that there's things that you can do both on conserving cash and improving operations, but as well investment opportunities. So talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys have invested in and are thinking about investing in over the next 6 months.
It's a great topic. I mean, on that continuum, you can either be too liberal with your money or you can be too paralyzed. And I tell you, when I first woke up, when all this was going on, so to speak, woke up into this whole pandemic thing, I was paralyzed at first. You get that fight or flight, and I'm talking about capital. Do you spend it or not? And basically, first thing I was like, hold on to your cash, don't spend it, got to weather this storm. And, once you kind of just stop, drop, and roll, so to speak, and just think about it, now then you realize, okay, there are certain opportunities, you should spend cash on, and or even take out debt, which sounds crazy, but it's that whole notion of pivoting. And so basically what we did is we analyzed the business and figured out exactly where it was that we could, spend capital on. And to that video and to the whole pandemic and the medical products, I mean, if you're in the medical space, for instance, and this could be not a pandemic, this could be a war, this could be a civil expansion endeavor, it could be a roads project in the United States, whatever you're in, it's really hard to figure out whether or not you should be spending, but you really spending on the right equipment at the right time is very important.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. Many businesses just sort of status quo, regardless of what's going on in our greater economy. And I think these are the opportunities in every business to think about how can we get nimbler, how can we seize an opportunity that is in front of us, how can we recover by just looking at some of the macro opportunities that are going on and figuring out where we fit into that equation. So really exciting. What about, there's one thing that I think has been really cool that you guys, or there's been a number of things that have been really cool that you guys have done. But one of the things that we've been fascinated about, we work with a lot of manufacturers. And so sharing, how essential businesses have gone through keeping their workforce safe and navigating through the shelter in place when you're still working. Talk a little bit about, you've been one of the few companies to receive this COVID-19 consulting audit from the Horton Group. So can you talk a little bit about that and then just your willingness to share it more widely, which is also a little atypical for manufacturers to be so generous with their secret sauce, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny, that secret sauce, if I was really to couch it properly, everybody's afraid of litigation, and I think that, again, I think we were talking about this earlier, and, basically our friends, our neighbors, our family, our community, our state, our peers, everybody in the country wants to get back to work, but I gotta tell you, there's a lot of liability out there. I saw just a real interesting, I saw a little video when Wisconsin opened up and they repealed their shut in place. And then all of a sudden this woman was at a bar and she's talking to the person interviewing her and and then come to find out she's a nurse. And she had to go and say, oh, I'm sorry, I went to the bar without a mask and I wasn't playing, and then now I'm going to quarantine myself for 14 days. Do not be fooled by anything. Going back to work, there's an enormous amount of liability for everybody. So I talk about liability, I couch it on liability, but these are also your friends. This is your family you're talking about, and so these protocols, everybody needs a working tool, not a guidance. The CDC put out, let's see, I don't know, this is like 100-page guidance, right? So the CDC just put this out. Can you see that at all? Yeah, so the CDC put that out just a couple days ago. It's all guidance, but I can't work with this document. It's not a Word document that I can edit and adopt and adapt and design to my plant. That's what everybody's putting out there. They're putting out advice in flat form. What we did is we turned around to keep everybody safe. We started producing our own document that is derived from a variety of sources. We have advisors, and Horton Group, to your point, was a really important element of that. I think you have to go to all these third-party people. We use other people like HR Source for, employment guidance. Is this policy good, we'll say? Is this pass legal muster? Horton Group, then they'll audit us, and they have a lot of services like that. So this is built around a lot of those parties. And I would also say this is built around a lot of legal advice too, you know, because we use Levenfeld Perlstein, and we also use Jones, Lemon, and Graham. Those two firms alone, we pass everything by them, more or less. They publish a lot themselves that we have to digest, and we pass ideas by them. And again, back to HR Source and Horton Group, those people, you need all these people. So this compendium is built out with a lot of advice. And a lot of it is derived, if not, most of it is derived from the CDC and OSHA. And so you can imagine that gulp in my throat about spending capital, that same gulp was in my throat at the same time trying to figure out how to run the business and grow the business and preserve the business. We had to keep everybody safe. It felt like over the past 8 weeks, felt basically impossible, you know? So, but basically we've had 8 weeks now to really evolve in that. And I'm hoping people take this. There's nothing in it for us, but we're neighbors, you know, and people have to deploy a lot of these practices. And by the way, I would even say, there's a lot of politics behind this, and I have my own politics, and I have my own view, and I've got my Google PhD in health sciences. I can tell you a lot, but you know what? In here, you know what's in here? In here is legal guidance. It's practical. It's CDC guidance. It doesn't matter what I think. I am indifferent to the world of what should or shouldn't be when it comes to work. You know, you have to follow the policies in place. Heck, the governor here was trying to impose a 1-year Class A misdemeanor that could get me up to 1 year in jail if I was running a business that I shouldn't be. Imagine people get sick and stuff. You know, so there's a Horton, HR Source, your attorneys, and also I should even add TMA, your local organizations, or the ones that are in your industry. For us, it's TMA, Steve Rauschenberger, and IMA with Mark Denzler. Those guys, they're out there producing and collating a lot of data and feeding it out there, and you got to tap them also. So there's a lot there behind that. I know this is not a long webinar per se, but there's a lot behind this. It's extraordinary how many hours, people, and inputs there have been into producing, you know, basically what is a safe plan for everybody.
Well, I mean, we are exceptionally grateful for you to share it with us. I think that's some of the things that we've done with our clients, is be able to collectively hear best practices and protocols that some of our clients were leveraging. And to your point, there is nothing more impactful to your business is being able to take something that somebody's put a lot of time and effort and thinking and money potentially into producing, and to be able to make it your own pretty easily. And I think, you know, there's just such a power of our networks today that we should all be tapping into as leaders. But you also did something interesting that we've also shared with a couple of our clients around your quarantining and packaging protocols, and a key message to how you're doing that. At least, can you share that as well?
Yeah,
talk about it.
I think anybody listening would realize that, you know, they go to the store and they bring something home, or was sent from Amazon or something like that, and you're wondering, was this just handled by somebody? I mean, whether it was you or getting curbside, you're worried about everybody handling everything. So that COVID-19 cleaning protocol, we are pretty sure that we were the first out there to do this, just in this respect, that how do you, all the stuff coming in, we could have a vendor that, you know, we get some steel part comes in, you know, like this, and that part that comes in, somebody in their shop had COVID-19, and it's a steel part where COVID-19 could be on there for 3 days, right? So we basically felt compelled to create a quarantine zone on everything incoming, categorize them, how we're going to clean them, basically build out a workstation where we could now disinfect them with all the EPA cleaners. And we're also building a UV disinfecting station for all incoming orders and outgoing orders. That tag that you have up there on the box, that was on there so that when they received that, they knew that we took great care. I mean, we can't guarantee there's no COVID-19 or anything, but it sure is nice when you know somebody did their diligence like heck to try and clean everything. You feel a lot better about it. And so I think that's what your question, if that answers it.
Absolutely. And I think that you also, Jeff, are you hearing an echo? Okay.
Yeah, there is an echo. And it's new. I hear it on myself.
Lisa? That working?
I hear you good.
I love technology.
Yep. Here, let me give it a shot.
Oh my God, that is so funny. Well, I'm going to keep going. But and came up during a prior webinar with Phil Sponsler, and you guys worked together on some of the sanitization technology that they were using in their medical like mass sanitizing device. And so, you know, I'm it's so incredible to hear the wider access to information, but then to know that you guys connected and shared some details was just incredibly cool as well.
Yeah, so that webinar that Phil was on with you guys, he disinfects, you know, the N95 masks so that, you know, there was a shortage of supply. So he came up with this unit to disinfect it with UV light. And we called him after your webinar and we're like, oh, can we get one of those units? We want to like disinfect our pens, our tools, our products and everything with UV light. And the problem is that he was totally booked on his capacity doing this, you know. So we built a machine. We're in the middle of building the UV disinfectant, but they helped us a lot. Like they said, oh, you got to keep it under the UV light this much, this long, polish the inside. And like they helped us. There's a real community of people that really, you know, and I believe the population at large of people far more than not want to help each other. And I think that I constantly see that, and it's always verified and re-verified by me that people really want to help. So.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot further that, thinking about our tribe and our community and trying, you know, when you give something, you get back so much in return. And I'm just so excited. I was excited to hear that little story that that came out of our first webinar. But I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the greater manufacturing community. And for years, we've been talking about things going offshore. And I know you've got a real passion around this topic. So can you share, you know, some of your thinking, what you're optimistic about on that topic?
Yeah, I think if I was to be really just frank, I would say I'm actually a globalist. However, that withstanding, you know, we're all, you know, almost in a protectionist state now, but being a globalist, you know, lifting all tides, or all boats rather, around the world is not a bad thing. But then just like everything, there's a little too much might happen. You kind of offshored some things you really shouldn't, you know, or some percentage you shouldn't. And I think if my answer is that, it's like, I don't believe in a protectionist state, but we definitely have to reshore a good number of things that we should have never offshored. Certain, you know, medical products, like they're talking about now, the pharmaceuticals, gloves, masks, or whatever else. You just really don't want to offshore that stuff. Look at what we did. We were able to do that. We're a 127-year-old company. And by the way, we're one of the only ones that do exactly what we do in the country. What if that wasn't here? I mean, who are they going to ring up, you know, to do that specific tooling? There are other ways to skin a cat, and people will figure things out. The great American ingenuity engine is alive. They'll figure things out. But how much more do you offshore where you just don't have any control anymore over everything? And when I say control, I'm also talking in that continuum of speed. I mean, the pandemic's not waiting around for anybody. So, you know, if you offshore something and you say, I'll just buy it from this other country, and it's definitely not cool. Definitely, I think somebody has to have a strategic view of the country and reshore all the right things to give us some buffer and measure of control, some ability to react. That's not a protectionist state. I think that's an intellectual state where you just do that. So it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, well, we're hoping that you're right. I think that we've seen just the only businesses that can truly produce things are the ones that produce mostly everything in their own facility, or have such tight contract manufacturing partners that can produce all these elements. But when we're waiting for parts to come from overseas, we're paralyzed. So it's going to be, I hope, an opportunity for American businesses to just think differently about how they partner, and not be as, you know, rock bottom dollar driven, more about strategy and how to continue to keep the small 127-year-old companies growing and thriving in our economy, because you guys are the guys that we're looking to now to solve these problems.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I think it's a terribly misunderstood area, manufacturing. Everything shows up from Amazon and the internet, and it's like eBay and everything else. And it's like, for the most part, either maybe a lot of people see it's made in China or it comes from somewhere, and nobody seems to really care. I don't know if that's exactly right to say. I don't mean to say there's a bad guy out there, but people definitely, what good is it if you know, our heroes in the front line, a doctor shows up and he's got no mask, no gloves, no needle, no drugs.
Right.
I mean, he's going to look at you and he's going to be about as useful as my cat licking me when I'm sick, which I don't have a cat. You know, it's, you know, you need all those things. And so we got to, as a country, really think about all those little nuanced things and just support a culture of self-reliance on certainly in critical things, you know.
Absolutely. No, we couldn't agree more. So tell me a little bit about, you know, what has been challenging. You've got so many positive things going on. What's been challenging?
Oh, I'll give you an example. All right. What's this? Is this a mask?
Yeah, I think so.
Is this a mask? Is this a mask?
Oh.
It's not a mask. That is not a mask. That is a face covering. Look it up on CDC. That's a face covering. It's basically cloth, it's fabric. So you say, what's troubling me? Everybody publishes, don't buy masks. They're no good. You're going to starve all the frontline workers. Then they say, buy masks, but don't buy that mask, but buy this mask, but wear this mask, but don't wear that mask. All right. It's crazy. So that's what troubles me, is the fluidity. As a matter of fact, they call an N95, OSHA calls it a respirator. That's something most people, another word people don't know, but it's fundamentally against OSHA regulations for me to let anybody wear this in our facility unless they have formal training. Yet everybody's wearing them around, right? So if you go to the supermarket with this on, that's great. But if you show up in our facility, I'm obligated, legally obligated, to train you on its use and also limit its use and also give you a medical questionnaire whether or not you really should or shouldn't wear it. This is a mask also. This is what the doctors wear, this just stop droplets of blood. It's not an N95 mask. Consequently, it's not as restrictive either on your breathing. So this is manageable. But the CDC calls this a face covering. They don't call this a mask. So what if you're wearing this in the supermarket? Good luck going to work and trying to wear this for 8 to 10 hour shift. Look at this, just not going to work. And you know what? I had somebody come in our shop and they wanted to wear their own. I was like, okay, that's cool. By the end of the week, it was like, forget, this is impossible. I mean, these are almost impossible to wear on an 8 to 10 hour shift. So if you're coming back to work, I mean, but you have to wear it. But here's the other thing. A lot of people think the government mandates wearing masks and face coverings. They don't at all. If I was the only person in the Yellowstone Park, I don't have to wear a mask. It's not, doesn't matter. But if somebody comes up to me while I'm in Yellowstone Park, I better put this on. You know what I mean? And it only has to be a face covering. It doesn't have to be an N95 mask. It doesn't have to be a surgical mask. But so it's been trying to mire through that. And a lot of people also don't understand, like the governments, they said, the reason they say that you have to wear a mask in a store is because it's an indoor public place, and they can't guarantee that you won't go near him or he won't go near her. That's why they can't guarantee that. Inside of a manufacturing facility, when we're all going back to work, your employer hypothetically can guarantee that you will not be within 6 feet of each other, and you really don't have to wear a mask and work, sort of. So you say, what's hard? This is hard, so I'm working through this, right? So now I have to, if I see somebody within 6 foot of each other, I have to discipline them in one way or another. I said, you're breaking the rule, you know? So you don't want to make it mandatory, but it's mandatory. But, you know, you have to make sure so you say, what's tough? That's what's tough. It's hard.
No, I 100% agree. As we were talking about earlier, we are not in the office. Obviously, I'm in my house. Lisa's in her house, but you know, we are going to return to the office in a few weeks, and we're already, you know, with as many resources as we have, we're still going to be struggling with trying to make it the right situation for our organization. So just wanted to ask a little bit of a personal question. You really, I do have the great fortune of knowing you and a number of your team members, and you've got just some incredible people, but what have you learned about yourself during this time? Is there anything that's changed or been like, a real aha moment?
Probably, I don't know if learned is the right word. I guess you could say that, but what reinforced something that I think, you know, if I'm a certified rescue diver, scuba diver, and I once ran out of air at 100 feet. And so I had to swim up 100 feet down, pretty much if you shoot to the top, you know. So basically I had to swim up to the dive master and signal that I was out of air. I don't even know why I was out of air. It was leak or something, or wasn't filled right, or the gauge wasn't right. But I had a signal that I was out of air. And the dive master looks at your eyes, and they, if they're afraid of you, if you're afraid and they're afraid of you, because you're going to panic and you're going to start pulling at their air mask and everything. So I wasn't scared. Well, I mean, I was scared. I wasn't panicked, right? And I think that reinforced something really important here where I am is, you know, it's important to not be panicked, and, you know, not to be flighty, not to be chaotic, not to be, you don't want to be all doom and gloom, but you got to tell it like it is. So it's amazing I don't care if you're managing your household or you're managing a 10,000 person company, you better doggone well hold on to all your faculties and try not to be too willy-nilly or chaotic or shift course, which the nature of their environment you're weaving anyway. If you add to that and you start weaving, everything will fall apart. You'll get everybody on pins and needles. Everything will, it will be hideous. And the anxiety that's in the environment is already enough. And so maybe I learned or solidified that, you know, you gotta, you know, hold steady, be cool. And you really do every day, every hour, every minute, every decision, things coming in from customers, equipment people, employees, lawyers. And, you know, we got an audit. We said, oh, can you come in and tell us how bad we're doing? We'd love to read that report. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that report and we're going to share how bad we did, which, by the way, it's in that manual. It tells us how bad we're doing, because you need somebody to tell you how bad you're doing so you can fix it.
Right.
So that's
the diagnostic is, you know, I think that's just a powerful tool in regardless of what conditions we're in, but having that diagnostic is always really informative on how you can improve. So I echo, you know, your sentiment. It has been I don't want to say unprecedented. It feels like that's the word we use so much right now, but it has been really challenging to have all these different things competing for your mind share right now, and trying to stay upbeat and optimistic. And so I absolutely appreciate where you're at, and
I want to share one thing with you, personal, as I broke a tooth, and I had to get it pulled because that's all they're doing is emergency. They won't do anything. So I went to the dentist, and the dentist said to me, "Oh, Jesus," says, "it's kind of funny." He says, "All I do is pull teeth on emergency calls. That's it." And he says, "It's unbelievable how many teeth he's pulled and how many people have broken teeth, because that unnerving agent, not only as an employee, as a peer-to-peer, but as a leader in a company or somebody managing and responsible for other people." He told me that everybody's grinding their teeth, and it's putting extraordinary pressure on the teeth, and it's breaking more teeth. So they fitted me for a night guard, so that it doesn't hurt as much, or I don't break my teeth as readily. So to your point, I mean, this actually translates into a deep sense of that unnerving nature. It permeates your sleep and everything else. And so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely feeling some sleepless nights, but I do think you've got a great team, and those are the things and that great tribe and network of community leaders that we are so fortunate to have, that really keeps me upbeat, optimistic, and feeling like I'm not alone in this whole situation, even if I am alone at home. So Lisa, I know we're probably getting some great questions. Do you think we should open it up and let Jeff answer some attendee questions?
Yes, we'll go ahead and get started with that. So there's actually a great question that came in, Jeff, and I'm actually going to do a precursor question to it because I think it'd be great for the audience to hear this, since I've gotten a chance to know you as well. So one of the things that we promoted ahead of your webinar today was almost a Murphy's Law of, if it's going to go wrong, this is going to happen. So I was wondering, before I ask this next question, could you share a little bit about what Crafts has had happen in the last 6 months? That the pandemic is not the only thing you guys have been dealing with when you say holding your course and trying to stay steady.
Yeah, I broke my tooth, and it was getting infected while I was delivering the tooling. And I was on the road. There's Murphy's Law. I'm like, could this happen at a worse time? I mean, and there's so many things like that that's stress related. But here I am on the road. I was delivering that tooling personally, and I'm like, how am I going to get a dentist? What am I going to do? Will they see me? And it's like, but I just used salt and just gargled.
That got cut from the video, you at the dentist.
Yeah, yes. But I know too, as far as your building, at least, like, your team has went through a lot. So for the fact of, before this, not only personal craziness, and also your team, when you talk about your culture and everything that you guys have gone through in the last 6 months, there's been a lot going on at the company.
Yeah, we invested close to $2 million in doing a plant expansion, and the whole roof, it leaked everywhere onto machines that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 machines leaked on it. They were in failure mode. We had to have them removed. You can imagine that. It's a 40,000 square facility, and a lot of really expensive high-tech equipment. And so through the expansion, and then also a key customer of ours, one of their suppliers told them they're closing down. The tariffs were killing them anyway. So they gave us a whole bunch more business. So we had to expand our business, redo our roof, redoing our HVAC, and doing all this at the same time. So it did feel like everything that could go wrong could go wrong. And then the pandemic, I didn't even explain, the pandemic was at the same time. It was they were all kind of converging at the same time. So it was endless. You can imagine why I broke my tooth.
So with all of that in mind, I thought it was really pertinent, one of the questions that came in. Has there been any innovative ideas that Crafts has developed to help advance the manufacturing industry as a result of the pandemic that's going to help set you apart? So now, hearing the backstory, I think this question actually has a little bit more weight as well.
Yeah, that's actually, there is. Just the genesis of our opportunity in medical products, basically, if you make a medical product, whatever the medical product is, you basically, nobody retools. They have what they call a validation cycle. And when you make that, if you make that pill or you make this syringe or you make what blood tube or whatever you're making, it's all validated. And basically nobody wants to change it. But the people that I really thought about this, that like that company Hologic and Prestige Mold, they said, let's retool something, right? And they retooled a medical product, and they, got great cycle time, best in class quality and all that. And I think in manufacturing, in injection molding, I think that paradigm is busted up a little bit. Just, you can retool things with just, and reset yourself and reset your course for going to another product line or another element of that product line fairly quickly. I'm making light of that a little bit. I mean, it's a very complex process. Any of you injection molders watching me out there would laugh if I just say it's that easy. I'm just saying it gives rise to those possibilities, retooling, acting light on your feet. So I don't know, maybe we sparked a little more of that thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So next question, we're actually going to flip over to your COVID-19 plan. Do you have any general guidelines in place if one of your staff comes to you and says, this is way too restrictive, or on the other side, we haven't done enough, what else are we going to do? And you're laughing, so I'm assuming this has already happened once or twice.
Once or twice a week, you mean? So this morning I sent an email to my vice president, who is on rotation out of the office. And they come up with these little things like it's a tracker. You put it on your belt. And like if you come within 6 foot of somebody, it goes beep, 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 and flashes a little light. And so he sends me back an email. If we try that, no, we're not going to get anything done. I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. But so there's all kinds of things that we're doing that are constantly questioned. And everything we've imposed, I say imposed, but we're collectively review it. The cleaning station, our safety officer, our safety liaison, Glenn, he's like, there's so many protocols, and it's like, we're evolving. And so I say, basically, don't worry about the protocol, implement it, and it's meant to be changed. It's a live document, it's a live process. So everything has been questioned, everything in almost every respect. If you go through this manual, I think every element in one way or another was questioned. And you know what? Communication is big. Our plant manager, operations manager, vice president, our engineering staff, and everybody is in a really high communication mode. So that doesn't mean that, people don't get a little bit pensive or anxious, but they and we all question each other all the time, have to be very communicative about all of those things, and then evolve as you need to make sure you're doing something practical also. It's like the mask thing, right? So we said, for instance, if you're at your machine and nobody's around at all, if I'm in my office there for 3 hours and I'm alone, I can take my mask off. But if somebody comes in my door and they're 8 feet away, I got to put my mask on. So all those protocols were questioned. When do you put it on? Should we wear it all the time? Which one shouldn't you wear? Do you mind if I wear my own? When do you give them out? How many do I get? That's too little. That's too many. 8 weeks of all week, everything being questioned. So I can tell you, I just got a pit in my stomach every day with this notion. A good pit, though. It's just, anyway, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. Thanks, Jeff. I'm actually going to combine the next two because they're very similar. So obviously you seem like a positive guy. I've gotten that comment. What is one thing that you do to stay focused every day, or one thing that you've really kind of, to Kathy's point, leaned in on to help you remain positive during this time when there is so much wanting to give you that pit in the bottom of your stomach?
I don't know that there's one thing. I do exercise, and that's important. I make sure I make a cocktail at the end of the night. That's important.
Yeah, I think I do during the cocktail hour multiple times.
I'm pretty sure anybody watching this who knows me has had a cocktail hour of mine or two and said, Jeff, do you remember what you said last night? Anyway, no, I don't. I don't encourage drinking. But it's just, I live alone. My kids are with me regularly and, on rotation and stuff. But so, I mean, I just really working out is probably the only, running and stuff. That's probably the only thing that has actually truly given me release. The drink is just the after effect, but that's about it.
All right. And for our final question, again, I'm going to combine two because they were really similar as well, so we can be respectful of everyone's time. So I had one question that is, what's next for crafts? And then another one that was very similar of, what's next for crafts and how are you preparing for the next 6 months? What does that look like in your world right now?
Basically, it's leaning back into our original strategic plan and basically that we were finished developing it and, and modify it according to the pandemic and the current situation. But listen, a 127-year-old company, or even if you're a 5 or 10-year-old company, I mean, you basically, your business, you already had a strategy, and letting the pandemic unseat you from that strategy is not a good idea. But you doggone better, let it nudge you, push you, and shape or influence your strategy. Don't get me wrong, but just upend. I mean, you have to reassert yourself in your original strategy. If you understood your value proposition, go back after that value proposition. That's all I would say. So lean back into our strategic plan building.
I love it. So perfect way to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been, I mean, how much I could just talk to you for hours. So, but it's been such a pleasure.
I'm going to say we have talked to Jeff for hours before too. So all in a good way though, especially our weekend conversations when you were actually delivering the products to the facility. Those were a lot of fun. All right, for those of you who are attending, please know today's session was being recorded. We'll be sending it out afterwards in a follow-up email, as well as putting it on our Red Caffeine website. I had a few questions on what else we'd be including. So you will be getting Jeff's COVID-19 plan from Crafts. So you can use that to help your own facility go through and make sure that you are up to standards. And as Jeff said, they've got where they weren't doing so great in there, so everyone can learn from that. And we'll also include a link to the video that we shared today, as I did get a few comments that there were a few glitches with that. If you have any other questions for Jeff, we do have his contact information up on the screen. I know he is more than happy to answer questions and has already been one of the people using our Business as Unusual webinar to network, as he mentioned, with Phil Sponsler at Orbit Forum, who was our first webinar speaker. So reach out to Jeff with any questions. And thank you, Jeff, for participating today. Loved hearing from you and just the positivity, which is, of course, why we're doing this webinar series. As we look ahead, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to say thanks, everybody, for just joining in. I really appreciate you taking your time. A lot of you listen to me on a regular basis, so I appreciate you listening in. And good luck with everybody opening back up or operating ever safer.
So our next session will be in 2 weeks on June 4th, which is another Thursday at noon Central Standard Time. We'll be featuring Jim Carr, who's the president and CEO of Carr Machine and Tool here in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Jim also is the co-host of the #1 manufacturing podcast, Making Chips. So you may be very familiar hearing his voice, but we'll have the chance to interview him live during our Business as Unusual series. Jim also, just like Jeff, has a lot of positivity, especially looking into the second half of this year and seeing really where kind of the future of manufacturing is going, from reshoring efforts to seeing the revitalization of manufacturing in the US. So you will want to stay tuned for that episode. We'll have more information here in the next few days, so you can go ahead and register, or you can go to redcaffeine.com, find the Business as Unusual icon on the main page, and you can register there as well. If this is your first time hearing about Red Caffeine, thanks so much for tuning in. You can also reach out to us at connect@redcaffeine.com, or if you have a speaker recommendation, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, thank you everyone for attending today. As Jeff said, go forth and be safe, and we'll see you again in the next 2 weeks. Bye.